Hare Krishna. So great honor and privilege to have His Grace Kalakantha Prabhu with us. His Grace Kalakantha Prabhu Ki. He was initiated by our dear Srila Prabhupada and back in 1973. After that, he served as a temple president at ISKCON, Florida for over 15 years. He rendered many services like book distribution and so forth, and is also an author of 4 books. 2 of those books are available today here. And from one of the books, Prabhuji is going to speak. Another book that we have is The Rap of God. I just read it yesterday. And it's really an interesting, and for all the Bhagavad Gita participants, in fact, each one of you are attending Bhagavad Gita classes. It's a wonderful book to have. In a very concise manner, the whole very relevant way, Prabhuji have brought out the whole summary of 700 verses. Apart from that, Prabhuji is known all over the world for organizing and managing the university lunch program, which is the only university lunch program in the world with ISKCON that we do it. That is happening for the last 50 years at University of Florida, Gainesville, which started with a little endeavor on the request of Srila Prabhupada. And of course, there were a lot of obstacles and challenges and so forth. And they have been consistently continuing with that lunch program for last 50 years, where every day more than 1,000 students come and take Krishna lunch. And I'll request Prabhuji. I would request Prabhuji only to explain about that a little bit. Like yesterday morning, Prabhuji was saying that sometimes, the one devotee heard a conversation between 2 students, all American, taking a Krishna lunch program, and one student telling the another student, I really love Krishna. They don't say Krishna lunch, they say Krishna, so they don't know who Krishna is, so they're very new. So they say, I really love Krishna. The other student said, I'm also beginning to fall in love with Krishna. And not only that, they have, Prabhuji have started under his direction and guidance, they also started Krishna House 10 years ago. And since then, this is the only successful youth center in America, consistently running for last 10 years, where more than 300 students studying in the university joined a center like this, got trained in Krishna consciousness, and are practicing Krishna consciousness in different responsibilities all over the world. More than 300 students is a big number. And they are from all phases of life, from all different parts of the world. Like that, many interesting things. I would request Prabhuji only at the end of the talk, maybe he can tell us something about more. So we are inspired to do something here, whatever we are doing, we can add some value to it. So with that, once again, we heartily welcome His Grace Kalakantha Prabhu. His Grace Kalakantha Prabhu Ki. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all. Yes. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see such an enthusiastic and well-organized group. And Pune is one of my very favorite places to visit. A center of education historically, yes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, Madan Sundar Prabhu asked me to speak tonight about forgiveness. And I would like to read some excerpt from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. How many are familiar with Srimad Bhagavatam? Okay, very good. So this was the first book that Srila Prabhupada published and brought with him when he came to America in 1965. And the Bhagavatam is the postgraduate study of Bhagavad Gita. So in this section of Bhagavatam, we're going to talk about the subject of forgiveness, which is exemplified by one great devotee we'll be reading about. Now, I'd just like to encourage everybody, Hare Krishna, Krishna consciousness, sometimes people ask me why I have stayed in ISKCON so many years, and aside from a lack of imagination, doing anything else, I have found things that I really enjoy doing. My wife and I are both disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and we She likes to do deity sewing and other devotional hobbies. I like to do writing, so I've gone through the Bhagavatam in different sections and put it into a condensed kind of poetry, turning each verse into a couplet. Because I'm English speaking, I don't know Sanskrit, and I also wonder what would it be like if we could hear Srimad Bhagavatam today, if we were sitting listening to Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, but in English. And they were speaking in Sanskrit very rapidly. Like in Gita, 45 minutes maximum conversation. And it takes us 2-3 hours to just read the Sanskrit. Okay? So they're speaking so quickly. But what would it be like in English? So that's what I'll present to you, this little pastime. We'll discuss a bit, and then we'll go into this topic of forgiveness. All right? One day a bull named Dharma, who was truth personified, approached a cow, like the earth herself, who piteously cried. She looked just like a mother with a child now lost or dead. Concerned with her condition, Dharma limped to her and said, "Dear madam, you are always healthy grazing on this hill. How has this wave of sorrow caught you? Are you feeling ill? Has something awful frightened you, discoloring your face? Has your beloved left you for a distant, dangerous place? I only have a single leg. I've lost the other 3. Have you become unhappy at the very sight of me? As citizens have spurned the gods and lost their drink and food, do they now want to eat your flesh? Has mankind grown that crude? Do fathers leave their wives and kids for any selfish whim? Do so-called learned priests become the slaves of many sins, while disrespectful rulers keep them happy on the dole? Has all this degradation shred the fabric of your soul? The people of this Kali age behave themselves like beasts who dine on flesh, expose themselves, and care not in the least. The great administrators of this brute society won't even lift a finger to restore propriety. Dear Mother Earth, Lord Krishna came to mitigate the pain inflicted by atrocious kings whose greed drives them insane. To simply think of Krishna's deeds assures our liberation. Do you now weep and suffer from Lord Krishna's separation? So the cow, or the bull, is seeing this crying, very sad cow and speculating what could be the cause of your distress. So many things he's listed. Then he says, or is it because Krishna has left? This is, after all, the context of the Bhagavatam. The very beginning of the Bhagavatam was all these sages gathered at Naimisharanya asking, what will happen to religious principles now that Krishna has left earth? So earth personified is very distressed, so the bull is asking. He goes on, when Krishna walked your surface, all the gods in heaven sighed and felt intensely jealous of your fortune and your pride. Now time, alas, has changed your fate, and you appear so weak, I wonder if you even have the energy to speak. I'll try my best to answer, said the earth personified. She gathered her composure as she brushed her tears aside. It pains me so to see you crippled, dear and noble friend. You used to have 4 solid legs on which I could depend. Your leg known as austerity no longer bears your weight. Your leg known as compassion has been broken out of hate. Your leg of sanitation seems to be completely gone, and truthfulness alone remains, just barely hanging on. I suffer at the sight of you, but even more I cry, for Krishna has departed for the spiritual sky. With Krishna gone, the earth becomes a toy for Kali age. The might of Kali's power has reduced me to this stage. Lord Krishna is a reservoir of truth and cleanliness, and all these other attributes a person may possess. Control of raging anger and the trait of being kind, confidence, straightforwardness, and steadiness of mind, mastery of the senses, responsibility, fairness, even-mindedness, and equanimity, education, faithfulness, divine austerity, influential leadership, heartfelt chivalry, worthiness of being worshipped, absence of false pride, steadiness and fame. In Krishna, all these traits reside. So she lists very beautifully. All these things have disappeared now that Krishna has left. And truth, religion, dharma is just barely hanging on. Though Krishna's very presence kept the Kali age in check, now everybody suffers Kali's horrible effects. So I despair for you and me, the gods and saintly souls, and all the decent people in Varnashram social roles. Impressing marks of thunderbolts and flags and lotus flowers, Lord Krishna's footprints graced my soil, investing me with power. The goddess Lakshmi, queen of wealth, whom all the gods entreat, departs her lotus-filled abode for Krishna's lotus feet. So very poetically she's saying how when Krishna walked on her, she felt so pleased. And even Lakshmi will not stay in her abode when Krishna is available elsewhere. Does anyone say that prayer? One of my friend's mothers used to say this beautiful prayer when she would rise in the morning before standing up. She would apologize to Mother Earth for standing on her. Yes? Is that a tradition? No? Anyway. I once was overburdened due to atheistic kings, till Krishna smashed their armies and relieved my suffering. My dear religious dharma, demons brought you misery till Krishna graced the human race and Yadu dynasty. If once one sees Lord Krishna, can one bear to be apart? His wives protested when he left, but Krishna charmed their hearts. Though Krishna sometimes left his wives, his feet could not leave me. And where he walked, my grass stood up like hairs in ecstasy. As Mother Earth and Dharma thus conversed as bull and cow, and comforted themselves as far as circumstance allowed, the mighty King Parikshit and his entourage arrived and rested on the nearby Saraswati riverside. So this is just after Yudhisthira has left the kingdom to his grandson, Parikshit, and Parikshit has come now to tour his kingdom when he comes upon this scene of Kali beating a cow, something unimaginable. King Vishnurata looked and saw a shocking spectacle. Vishnurata is another name of Parikshit. Saw this shocking spectacle, a low-class man in royal garments bludgeoning a bull. The pure white bull, too frightened to negotiate or beg, just trembled and passed urine on his one remaining leg. Besides the bull, a lovely cow, the emblem of all good, withdrew in terror as the scoundrel beat her where she stood. Distressed and weak, with teary eyes and no calf at her teat, she hankered just to find a grassy field where she could eat. King Vishnurata watched this blatant sin with shock and wonder. With bow in hand, he screamed out in a voice as loud as thunder, "Immoral rogue, how dare you strike this helpless bull and cow? Though dressed up as a monarch, your behavior is most foul. With Krishna and Arjuna gone, have you become so bold to beat a harmless cow as if my lands were unpatrolled? You think you will be safe in this remote, secluded place? You demon, I'll destroy you and protect the human race." The king then asked the wounded bull, "Who are you, my dear friend? You seem to be a god who has elected to descend. At no time in the history of our ancient royal line has anybody suffered such an irreligious crime. Dear bull, you're well protected now. You needn't worry, you're well protected now. And you may also dry your tears, O gentle mother cow. As long as I am living, I shall thoroughly subdue debauchees like this rascal who has been attacking you. When cows are hurt, the king shall forfeit everything of worth, his life, his reputation, and auspicious future birth. Religious kings protect the weak from those who wish them ill. This wretched, violent man must be immediately killed. The Pandu kings rebuke those who ignore the scripture's laws unless there is an emergency or reasonable cause. The gods themselves shall feel my strength and suffer from my wrath should they abuse my subjects and pursue an evil path. The scriptures guide my kingdom, and my subjects are secure. How dare this cruel person break the legs of one so pure? A fenceless bull, who is this man who mutilates your frame and undermines the glory of our royal family name? Now this is a very odd question. He's just seen what's going on. Kali is beating the cow and the bull. But he asks the bull, who is doing this? He's right there. He sees the whole thing. And yet he turns to the bull and says, who is doing this to you? Now listen to what the bull says in reply. The bull looked very thankful and respectfully replied, your words befit the Pandu line which you exemplify. Your forefathers created such an ideal atmosphere that God himself, Lord Krishna, came to serve King Yudhisthira. Dear King, it is quite hard to say by whom we are abused. Philosophers debate this point, but they too seem confused. Some say we cause our own distress when we commit a sin, while others say that higher powers rule the lives of men. And some declare that nature causes random joy and grief, while others claim that action rules, rejecting all belief. And some conclude that suffering can never be explained. In light of all these points of view, what do you ascertain? Personified religion, in your awe-inspiring way, you do not fault this man who has abused you here today. And yet your troubles aren't explained by such philosophy, for God himself alone controls a person's destiny. So King Parikshit responds in this very appreciative way. The bull is being beaten, and when the king asks, who's doing this to you? He just says, it's very hard to tell. Some say that we cause our own distress because of our own misdeeds, while others say that the gods control what happens to us, and if we're suffering something, it's because of the gods. While others say that it's just nature randomly bringing suffering on some, enjoyment on others. And some just say that you can never explain why you suffer. Now, how would you have handled that? If somebody was beating you up and the policeman came and said, who is doing this to you? How would you respond? You might say, can't you see? But yes, like you, I would point, it's him. But Dharma, religion personified, refused to blame his attacker. And King Parikshit appreciated this, as very wise. Why? Because if we blame, he said to the bull, if you were to blame your attacker, then whatever suffering will come to him for his sin, that will also, you will be implicated in that suffering. So by refusing to blame the person who is hurting you, then you have avoided that implication. So here in Bhagavatam, we find this very valuable lesson. Yes, it is a very natural propensity to want to protect ourselves and counteract the injustice that has been inflicted on us by others. So let me ask you a very personal question, if I may. And those who are married, you are exempted from answering this question. Without saying who, has anyone in your life ever caused you suffering? Please raise your hand. No one? No one has ever, okay, one went, okay. Just one. If no one has ever suffered here, then my class on forgiveness will be, okay, all right.
Let's follow the popular vote.
Like, generally, most of us feel in some point in our life we have been subjected to some injustice, isn't it? Yes. Either by the government, or by a relative, or by a stranger, or someone at work, somehow or other, we have that feeling. So it's explained that all of us share 4 common properties with animals: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So of these 4, Srila Prabhupada said that the defending propensity is the strongest. The defending propensity means, he said, that if somebody insults us, we insult them back. We want to protect our position. We don't want to compromise. We don't want injustice inflicted upon us. And so righteously we stand up for ourselves. But this is a very knee-jerk kind of reaction. And the finer points of spiritual life teach us that if we react in that way, we become implicated, just like the bull. So by avoiding that reaction, then we can spare ourselves further involvement. In other words, we are getting hurt, but we will not be hurt anymore. And the person who is hurting us will have his own fate to suffer. We don't have to be involved. Isn't this how wars start? Somebody hurts someone and somebody fights back, and then they say, you've responded too harshly. No. So this is how the implications of karma complicate our lives, and how a saintly person, an enlightened person, will just avoid responding to the first strike. Now this may make us appear to be weak, and we will be fearing that people can take advantage of us if we don't fight back. But understanding the subtleties of forgiveness will actually give us the intelligence to respond in an appropriate way. So here are some strategies for doing that. Well, first of all, just let's review a little bit more. So Dharma refers to morality and duty. And Vishnurata catches the Kali age as he's about to kill Dharma. Kali's identity is quite clear because he's standing next to his victim with his weapon in hand. And yet when Vishnurata asks Dharma who has caused the suffering, Dharma does not blame his attacker. By overlooking the immediate cause of his suffering and considering possible remote causes, including divine will, Dharma exhibits his saintliness and makes it much easier to exercise forgiveness. When someone wrongs us, forgiving them can be extremely difficult. Our minds may insist that forgiving the wrongdoer will allow them to hurt us again. Our minds may, however, if we fail to forgive the one who has hurt us, we do more harm to ourselves than to our antagonists. Failing to forgive someone who has hurt us means that we hold a grudge against them. This grudge is like a sore spot on our hearts that pains us throughout our lives. If we never forgive that person, we carry the grudge to our grave. The Bhagavad Gita explains that whatever we remember at the time of death determines our next birth. Thus, maintaining an unresolved grudge with a person who has wronged us means we may have to be around them again for yet another lifetime. Even if we understand forgiveness intellectually, it can be hard to feel it in our heart, right? So here are some ways that we can invoke forgiveness in our hearts. We've explained now philosophically why it's to our benefit to forgive a person who hurts us. Because then we don't have to go around carrying the grudge, carrying this ill feeling. Yeah?
Can I just make an announcement?
We have a short word from our sponsor.
Hare Krishna, there is a lack of space, so we're going to open the balcony, and some of the men can move in the balcony, so the congregation can come up.
Okay.
Switch off the AC. Can't switch off the AC.
Okay. The time when you have felt really hurt by someone to a point where you wanted some kind of vengeance, you wanted to see them hurt, you wanted to do something that would make them upset, right? If we are feeling that way, how do you think our antagonist feels? In other words, if we are angry and upset and somebody is wanting us hurt, how do they feel when they see us angry?
Happy.
They're happy, right? So this is one thing. We are responding in a way that makes the other person, the person who has hurt us, feel good. It's like saying, I'm mad at you, so I'm going to drink this poison. That'll teach you. See, our heart becomes damaged, and the other person is not affected at all. So self-realization means to dig deeply into our hearts and see these things. How are we hurting ourselves, carrying the grudge? And so forgiveness is not for it's not for the other person's benefit. It is for our benefit, being able to shed that burden of anger and animosity. So here are some things to try to convince our minds that it's better to forgive, okay? Try to see things from the other person's point of view by thinking, perhaps if I were in that person's circumstances, I would have done the same thing. This is not easy, but it is a way to redirect our intelligence. If I were in this person's position, looking at myself, I might have done the same thing. Whatever pressure this person was feeling that made my feelings and well-being expendable to him, I might have done the same thing. Another way to try to convince our mind is to say, look, let us cut our losses by thinking, what I really want is not to have to interact with this person again. And again, I did give a marriage exclusion on this discussion. Okay. So we're talking about non-marriage relationships. All right. I never really want to associate with this person again. Therefore, let me forgive and forget so that I can move on as quickly as possible and focus on my relationship with people whom I love and who love me. You see? Redirecting our energy. Okay, I've been hurt. I have a setback. It's done. It's over. Let me just move on. And let me get this person out of my mind and out of my life. Now, of course, this brings to mind what residents of Vrindavan? The gopis, right? They were so shocked that Krishna had left them and so angry at him that they could never stop talking about him. And sometimes they say, let's stop talking about Krishna. He can forget about us, we'll forget about him. And that would last about 30 seconds. But unless it's Krishna we're talking about, then yes, why not? Think, yes, okay, over and done, let me move on, without animosity. Another strategy, as far as possible, this is even more difficult, but as far as possible, without exposing ourselves to more association, try to think of this person in a positive way. This person is a fellow human being, however flawed they may be. But this actually will bring us more peace of mind than thinking with animosity towards the other person. They're a human being, they have faults, and you know, they have some good qualities too. There's a story of Queen Victoria in England, who just after ascending to the throne was brought a capital case. Any case involving the death penalty had to be brought to the monarch. So the prosecutor brought this soldier and laid out all the evidence. He's done this, Your Majesty, and this, and this, and this. Therefore we want him to be put to death. So the queen asked the prosecutor, in the course of your investigation, did you find anything good about this man? And the prosecutor was quite surprised with this question. And he hesitated and said nothing. And the queen again said, did you find anything good about this man? Tell me. Well, Your Majesty, I was told that he was good to his family. Then I forgive him. So this is a very counterintuitive thing to do. But if somebody has hurt us, if we think about what good quality does this person have, and just try to focus on that. This is a way that gives us peace of mind, more than thinking, what a terrible person this is. Yeah. Finally, a fourth strategy. See the antagonist as an agent of your own karma. See the antagonist as an agent of your own karma. In other words, it is not this person who is hurting me. I'm just getting reactions to my own past sins that are coming through the agency of this person. This also takes some deep spiritual knowledge. After all, if we had not elected to leave Krishna in the first place and come to Pune, we would not be experiencing the difficulties of this life. It was our choice to try to enjoy without our Creator, and thus wind up in this world of birth and death where we cannot really ever find a peaceful situation. So this person coming to me, hurting me in this way, is nothing but a little bit of the reactions that I'm due from my own past misjudgments. In this way, we can also let the person go from our hearts and minds with forgiveness. There was a story that one of my dear friends, Peter Burwash, tells. He was a young professional tennis player, just starting his career, when he discovered Krishna consciousness and bought all of Prabhupada's books and was reading and chanting. So he came to the local temple and he said, I want to become a life member. And he gave $1,000, which was a huge amount of money for him at that time. So the temple president, in that fledgling little temple, the next day disappeared with the money and absconded with it all. So Peter went to Srila Prabhupada and told him what had happened. I gave him my life membership money. So Prabhupada responded in a way that has been, he said, one of the cornerstones of his life ever since. He said, do not blame the agent of your karma. If somebody is bringing us suffering, they are just bringing us what we have earned. And if we're devotees of Krishna, they're actually representing Krishna, doing a little surgery on our hearts, cutting our attachments a little bit. So these are all the benefits of forgiveness. These are some strategies for how to do it. And if we can practice these techniques when we're feeling hurt by someone else, thinking of them in a positive way, thinking that we might have done the same thing if we were in their position, seeing them as really representatives of our karma, or even of the Supreme Lord who's trying to help us become detached from this world. Our hearts then become light. And we can free ourselves of the burden of this grudge. This is reminiscent of the Buddhist story, the story of the two Buddhists, two monks. They were walking and they came to a river, and there on the edge of the river was an elderly woman. And she said, please, you're a young man, can you please help me cross this river? So the one monk said, no, we don't touch women. And the other said, yes, get on my shoulders. So they walked across the river, and after crossing, the woman thanked them, got down and left. So the two monks walked on for some time. And finally one monk asked the other one, how could you as a monk, how could you have taken a woman on your shoulders? And the other monk said, I carried this woman for 5 minutes across the river, and you've been carrying her on your mind for the last 2 hours. So it hurts to be abused by someone, disrespected. It insults our ego. But we can learn this art of letting it go, forgiving, and moving on with a light heart for our benefit. This is strictly for our benefit. Then whatever destiny has in mind for the other person, that's between him and God. We don't have to retaliate. We don't have to let it bother us anymore. This is one of the great benefits of Krishna consciousness, because it takes spiritual strength. It takes introspection to trace out the roots of negative feelings and see how they hurt us. These are things we can't offer to Krishna. Krishna, please blast that person. Please, my dear Lord Krishna. This doesn't help our relationship with the Lord. He likes to be offered fruits and flowers and lovely things. So by growing these lovely fruits and flowers in the garden of our hearts, we have a nice offering for the Lord. He doesn't like to be offered poisonous, bitter fruits and wilted flowers and daggers. So, from Srimad Bhagavatam, this beautiful example, we learn how forgiveness can be handled in a philosophical way. How injury, I should say, could be handled in a philosophical way. Taking responsibility, seeing the other person with compassion. These are traits of advanced devotees. And yet, not being fools. We can forgive, but we don't have to forget. We don't have to put ourselves in a position again to be hurt. It doesn't mean to be a doormat, to be a person who's forgiving. But it means to understand what is good for our own spiritual growth and our own spiritual lives, and make that a high priority. My father used to say, when you are packing the car for a trip, put the biggest piece of luggage in the trunk first. And somehow or other you can fit everything else around it. If you put the small things in first, however, then you won't be able to get the big one in. So it is with spiritual life. If spiritual life is our highest priority, then we put that in first. And everything else we fit around it somehow or other. See? And that applies to grihastas, brahmacharis, it really doesn't matter. That's an individual choice we can all make. If our spiritual life is the most important thing, and we give the greatest attention and time to our chanting and hearing about Krishna, then the other things will follow. We can find a way. Spiritual life is not meant to be postponed. If it's important to us, right? The general tendency is to think, I am very busy now, but when I'm old, then I will chant and hear about Krishna. What is the problem with that? There's two problems. One is that we may not grow old. We may not be around long enough. Right? The other is that if we get throughout our life the habit of putting our spiritual life on low priority, how are we going to change that in the end of our lives? See, the habit becomes very deeply ingrained. Therefore, now is a good time to deepen our spiritual life. If we never mind rising early, if we go to bed early, isn't it? The problem is not getting up early, the problem is staying up late, right? Especially young people, the brain tends to be more active at night. But in the Gita, Krishna says, Yanisha Sarvabhut, you have this problem. Yes. We forgive you. Yanisha sarvabhutanam yasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sanisha pashito muni. What is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the introspective sage, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the sadhu. So, to be able to go in a contrary direction to the way the rest of the society is rushing in the modes of passion, this requires a little bit of discipline. But that discipline of going to bed early pays off immediately, first thing the next day, by allowing us to wake up early and refreshed. Those hours are so precious. You know, this Brahma Muhurta, this hours before sunrise. If we invest our time in chanting at that time, or in reading the scripture, or both, it's like getting a vaccination for the material disease all day. Right? So all day long, we'll be able to be like the lotus leaf that rests on the water but doesn't get wet. We'll be dealing with our daily responsibilities, but with a wonderful sense of detachment. In young people's parlance, it means it is being cool, at least in my day. So what is the meaning of a cool? A person who is cool doesn't get affected by things. That's one of the results of taking the time to invest in our spiritual lives early in the morning. This is something all of us have the freedom to do, except maybe some mothers with young children. But otherwise, we have the right to go to bed early and then begin our day the next day in an auspicious way. We have a saying at the Krishna house that nothing good happens after 9 o'clock. Isn't it? Except maybe some Harinam sometime. Or big festivals. But yes, it's very natural to go to bed early because that's when the body is tired at the end of a long day. So, but the mind is saying, I've been working all day, now I want some me time, I want to enjoy, I want to do whatever I want for a while. And that's all right. But if spiritual life is the big suitcase in the trunk, then take your me time the next morning with Krishna. And then things like these very subtle matters, such as being able to forgive people who hurt us, they become possible because we're developing spiritual strength. Not only forgiveness, but detachment from bad habits, compassion to other people, patience. All these good qualities manifest automatically when we invest our time in the morning, particularly in chanting, preparing ourselves for the day. And this shows Krishna that he is the most important person in our lives. Sometimes we think, Krishna is so wonderful and I'm so impure that I'm not really qualified, so why even try? Has your mind ever suggested that? Krishna is so pure and I respect him so much and I'm so fallen that I don't even want to contaminate him with my association. Therefore, let me sleep. In fact, Krishna is such a very kind friend. Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Surhidam Sarvabhutanam, best friend of everyone. He only sees the service that we render. And he forgets about everything else. He is the most forgiving person. Our shortcomings are all forgiven if we make a sincere effort to please Krishna to the best of our ability in every situation. He's so forgiving. He will only see that, like the queen. What is the good quality? So some days, everything is going nicely. We're offering our life to Krishna. Our chanting is good. Our reading is good. We're feeling blissful. Then it's very easy to offer our love to Krishna. Other days, not going so well. But even then, even if we don't have so much, we offer to Krishna whatever we have. Because after all, Krishna is sitting in our hearts. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto. And matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. He's giving us knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness. So he knows we have no secrets from Krishna. He's observing everything like two birds in the tree. One bird is trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree, which are sometimes sweet and sometimes bitter. And the other bird is watching his friend very compassionately, waiting for him to give up this sometimes painful endeavor. So this is the analogy of the soul, the Lord sitting in our heart. He is waiting for us to stop trying to enjoy without Him. We are His parts and parcels. We are made to bring Him pleasure. If we are separated from Him, the value of our existence becomes very little. If a finger is attached to the body, it makes a nice contribution. But if it somehow becomes detached, what is its value? So similarly, if we are detached from Krishna, then our lives lose their meaning, their purpose. This is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. And Krishna is so forgiving that even if we can't do much, whatever we can, we offer to Him. And He will accept that and forgive everything else. So we are very blessed by Srila Prabhupada to have all this wisdom in the Bhagavatam and the Gita. And now it is our opportunity to apply it in our lives. To get rid of the burdensome feelings of anger and hate, to shift our focus to the Supreme and make spiritual life the highest priority. This is the lesson in Bhagavatam I want to share with you this evening. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Are there any questions or any reflections on this topic, Prabhuji? Shri Ram Gopal Prabhu?
Prabhu, thank you so much for such an enlightening class. My question is, it becomes easy to forgive when we know the root cause, in the sense, at least by intelligence we analyze the situation and we know who is behind that. Then we think that, okay, if I'm at his situation, how would I behave and all these possibilities. But we are put in some situation where we don't see root cause, or just get bewildering why we are putting in this situation. And just trying to imagine that how to come out of this becomes very difficult then. So how to respond to such a situation where we don't see the root cause, or what is the cause of our suffering?
We don't see why. Yes, there's no specific person to blame, like an illness or something, right? So it is a natural reaction to want to blame God or to question God, especially after so many mantras. The musician John Lennon was an atheist at the end of his life, and he wrote a song called God. And in this song he said, "God is a concept by which we measure our pain." You understand? If our pain is a little, we say, "Oh God." If our pain is a lot, we say, "Oh God." So this has to do with forgiveness also, actually, because we have to forgive ourselves and thus maintain our relationship with God intact. That, in other words, we have fallen into a situation where Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi are built in, they're baked in to our material body. And this was due to a mistake on our part. So we have made a mistake, we're getting the results of our mistake, now we want to rectify our mistake. So in that respect, the suffering becomes a great incentive for not letting it happen again. You follow? It's like the surgeon who is trying to cure the patient. How does he begin? With a knife. There's a cut, and then there's more cutting and a removal of the infection. So when Krishna is particularly kind to us, He will give us such very deep pain that we become convinced that we don't want to be in this world anymore. That is therefore His mercy. And He knows exactly what buttons to push. He knows exactly where our weak spots are, and He will go for them. If we are chanting sincerely, this is how He reciprocates. Yasyaham anugrahami harishe tanam shanai. I understand that in South India, this is why the worship of Lakshmi Narayan is more common than the worship of Radha and Krishna, right? Because Lakshmi Narayan are benevolent, opulent, and Krishna is Hari. He's taking the butter. He's taking the gopis' clothing. And He's taking our material enjoyment. He's taking our money. Hari. My godbrother Jayananda Prabhu, who was the only disciple Srila Prabhupada canonized, he said we should observe his disappearance day every year because he was such a pure-hearted soul. So Jayananda Prabhu had leukemia, and this leukemia caused him to go through great physical deterioration very rapidly. So his response to it was, in his writing, he said, I sometimes need these powerful reminders from Krishna that this world is not meant for my enjoyment. So this is a way we can respond without blaming God, but rather seeing that God is helping us become more detached from this world. You know, this, for me, in practicing bhakti for so many years, I consider this as my greatest gift from Krishna, that I just have no more vested interest in this world. And if something is important to me or seems important, I understand it's just ephemeral. You know, so I just really have, in gambling terms, they say you're playing with house money. Have you ever heard that expression? No, it's because you are pure and you never go to gambling. But if a gambler has money to gamble that is not his money, you see, then there's a chance he may win, so he's gambling very freely. He's got nothing to lose. You see? So similarly, if we have no more vested interest in this world, if we're ready to go, if our bags are packed and we're just waiting for the driver to take us back to Godhead, this may happen or that may happen, it no longer matters. See, then we're actually free to do things for Krishna, to take risks for Krishna, to extend ourselves more and more in devotional service one way or the other. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay, so these potent lessons are, Prabhupada once called them his, I think he said his medals. So many things happened to Prabhupada, right? His Bhagavad Gita manuscript was stolen. He was gored by a random cow while distributing back to Godhead. And he lived in poverty. So easily he could have said, Krishna, forget it. I'm giving so much and you give me this and this and this. But he considered those his badges of honor, that he persevered through these setbacks. And that gave him more and more strength to deal with incredibly difficult odds and situations. So it is a great benefit if Krishna is giving us some tests like that. Is that all right? Yes, Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for a wonderful enlightening class. My question is, whenever somebody points finger at me or says something bad to me, yes, I really immediately shoot back.
Yes.
That, do you think I am like this? I always tend to give explanations to why I am not wrong at this point.
Yes.
And this hurts another person, definitely. So how can somebody really stop that kind of tendency?
Yeah.
How can I stop that?
Well, this is the defending propensity. And somebody insults us and we say, no, you're wrong. Somebody criticizes, no, I was doing this and this and this. It's said that when you criticize somebody, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you, right? So if you're going to criticize somebody, do it like that. So I want to give you some practical suggestions, okay? Does anyone play tennis here? Okay. Well, anyways, see, somebody will hit a difficult shot. Then as a tennis player, you're charged to hit it back. So if somebody says something insulting to us, the way to respond is with a question. Because a question, especially an open-ended question, is a very neutral response that does not create defensiveness or express defensiveness. So does anyone know what is an open-ended question? What is who can say?
There's no binary answer.
There's no binary, you cannot answer it yes or no. Right. Open-ended questions always start with what or how. They get the other person to talk. So if somebody insults us, we can respond with an open-ended question. What is it specifically that I'm doing that is causing you distress? See, that shows that we're open-minded. We're ready to hear if there's some correction. You remember the story of Bhrigu Muni. And Bhrigu Muni was asked by other sages, who is the supreme, Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva? Right? So Bhrigu set out to find out, and he decided to commit an offense to each one of them to find out. So to Brahma, his father, he committed an offense of the mind. When his father entered the room, he did not stand up to show respect. And Brahma got very angry. And so he apologized. I'm sorry, father, and left. Then Bhrigu went to his brother, Lord Shiva, and began committing the offense of verbal abuse. Look at you, covered with ashes, garland of skulls, hanging out with ghosts. I don't want to associate with you. And Shiva became so angry that Parvati had to stop him. Otherwise he would have killed his brother. So again, Bhrigu excused himself and left. Then he went to Lord Vishnu. He was lying, having his feet massaged by Lakshmi. And he committed the corporeal offense. He went up and kicked Vishnu in the chest. To which Vishnu responded, "My dear Bhrigu, has my chest hurt your foot?" So then Bhrigu could understand Vishnu was God. He did not take offense. He did not become defensive. Therefore, he understood he was supreme. Now Lakshmi, on the other hand, she took offense. And ever since then, therefore, the Brahmins are always poor. So if we can learn to, if we think of defense like a wall, don't put up a wall. Then the communication is lost. So if a person attacks us and we build a wall, then there's no question of coming to an understanding. I'm not saying this is easy to do, but at least we should know what is a saintly person's response. To not become defensive means to try to understand the other person. Understand what it is that they feel we have done. We're not admitting we're doing it. We're not denying it either. We just want to understand. What is it? Tell me more. Tell me more. That's also like an open-ended question. Okay, so I see you're upset at me. Help me understand. What is going on? What have I done? How could I improve? How have you been hurt? Tell me more. Responding like that is very saintly, and that's the alternative to becoming defensive. As soon as we're defensive, we've fallen into the animal propensities. Other comments or questions? Prabhuji?
Again, thank you so much for bringing out these wonderful, subtle, science of this refined Vaishnava attribute to, forgive others and always be in a forgiving mood. It's very challenging, but particularly the 4 strategies and the last one, it's very appealing for devotees to see it as a divine plan or probably part of our own karma. So, Prabhuji, one question is, for practicing devotees and understanding this philosophy, at times it's easier, I would say relatively easier, when it comes, when these kind of offenses or attacks come from outsiders, like maybe a boss or a stranger or any other agency.
Yes.
But when it comes from your own near and dear ones, there is a challenge of we take them for granted. You know, and to the degree we take them for granted, to that degree our expectations are much more. And when those expectations are broken, it becomes more challenging. Like, you know, we've seen this case of Sati and her father Daksha Prajapati. She takes that as an offense while Shiva is trying to, Lord Shiva is saying, don't go, you know, better don't venture into that area. She goes and,
Forgive.
you know, ruins. So how do we take up these challenges to see our near and dear ones as really instruments of Krishna, and how do we practically, you know, apply this science of forgiveness?
Okay, so this part of the class will be addressed to married people. So the first point is to be in the mood of service. That will help us to not to take others for granted, because this is the real problem. We take others for granted. And then when the expectations are not met, we feel we have been slighted. When in fact, we are the ones who have been disrespectful, which can lead to emotions suddenly boiling over, right? So being in the mood of service, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Manasa Deha Geha Yokichumor, Arpimuntu Apati Nanda Kishore. From now on, now that I am a devotee, I now recognize that everything, my house, my wealth, my family, everything that is I consider mine is actually yours. And I am just here to take care of your possessions, my dear Lord. So this is the first point. Evaluate our own service mood. And then understand if we have been in the mood of enjoying or the mood of exploiting or not giving proper respect, it's very understandable that the other person would respond like that. So taking responsibility. But as much as we may try, some strife in the family is almost inevitable. As one of my godbrothers said, that when Krishna comes, he sends Jai and Vijay because the people you fight with best are your friends and family members. So it is not, it's to be expected that there'll be some discord from time to time. And often as a father, in my own life, I know that my loved ones don't always get it, which means I sometimes feel like I'm being a little taken for granted or abused. I'm trying to serve, and they're kind of not always reciprocating. But again, this to me is a better position to be in than expecting, hey, I am the father here, well, where is this, do this, do this. You know, if I treat them respectfully as adults, this makes the relationship much sweeter. And if there are flare-ups from others, it just makes me feel more detached from the whole situation, because I know I'm giving my best, and then again my expectations lower. See, this is the real problem. Our expectations for enjoyment in the material world are so high. Hey, Krishna, okay, you know, I'm expecting good family life. I want money. I want this. I want this. I want good health to enjoy it all, right? And when something goes wrong, what is this? Why is this happening to me? See, this is the mentality that keeps us bound to the wheel of birth and death. Rather, we should say, what else could I expect? So sometimes the family is a very great agent of spiritual enlightenment in this way. In the 11th canto, there's a beautiful story of the Avanti Brahmin. So he was a Brahmin, very prestigious, very wealthy, but he was a miser and a grouch. And the people in the village had to tolerate him because he was so influential, but they did not like him. So then, in time, somehow his fortune was reversed, and he ended up with nothing. And his family all left him. And all of that somehow made him awaken in spiritual life, and he became genuinely detached. And so he adopted the role of a sannyas, renunciate, and he just begged in the village where he used to be such a big person. But because everybody knew him from before, they all treated him so badly. They spat at him, they urinated on his food, they passed foul air in his face, they would steal his begging bowl and then pretend to give it back and then take it again just to agitate him. They say, who is this renunciate? We know him, he's just a miser. So as he was going through these things, he spoke a beautiful verse. Let's see if I can remember it. Nayam janame sukha dukkha hetur. Yes. That these people, these jana, are not the cause of my sukha and dukkha, happiness and distress. Nadeva tatma, nor the demigods, nor my own body, graha, nagraha, kala, karma, or the planets, or my karma, or time. But manatparam, my mind alone, is the karanam atmani. The wise people say it is only my mind and the way I'm responding that is the cause of my suffering. So this is the prayer of the Avanti Brahmin. And the suffering we go through in family life will gradually make us detached. You know, it's like have you ever heard this expression, I'm fried? Yeah, I'm fried, yes. I mean, you know, so like when a seed is put in oil and cooked, it becomes fried and therefore it can't sprout anymore. So if we're feeling fried in our family life, that's a good thing. Then there's no more material bodies are going to be sprouting. I hope that helps. Don't tell my wife I said any of that. All right, last. Anyone else? Okay, I'll try to be short. Yes, Prabhuji. These two gentlemen? Yes. And I'll try to keep the answer short because I know where time is. Okay. Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the motivating discourse. So, I have a question like, what is the best way to express our gratitude towards Krishna? Like, it can be a priority of chanting over seva or seva over chanting.
Prabhupada gave this priority list. He said the devotee, the first concern should be taking care of your health. First priority is health, because if health is not good, then you cannot perform devotional service. Second priority is chanting. Third priority is service. And fourth priority is reading. So one cannot be a yogi if he eats too much, eats too little, sleeps too much, or does not sleep enough. Therefore, we have to meet our basic necessities in an efficient way. And again, going to bed early is like gold. Every hour of sleep you get before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight. So health is first, and all that may seem counterintuitive. This is Krishna's body. Like Sanatana Goswami, it was infested with all these ugly sores all over his body, and he decided that he wanted to commit suicide because Lord Chaitanya would embrace him, and he couldn't tolerate the thought of Lord Chaitanya embracing his infected, pus-covered body. So he decided he was going to throw himself under the Rath Yatra cart at the next Rath Yatra festival. But Lord Chaitanya understood this and came to him and said, "What are you doing? This body doesn't belong to you. You have no right to throw it to commit suicide. This body is, you've offered this body for my service. Now I have important things for you to do." So we become the steward of Krishna's body. Health, first priority. And then we use that energy and time for chanting His holy name. And then serving as much as time allows. And then reading to help reinforce our understanding. Okay? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for your association here. You mentioned about suffering, the suffering that comes in the form of from others or in the form of Janma Mrityu, Jara Vyadhi. And we do understand it philosophically that yes, this is it. And then we say, okay, I got it, spiritual life now. I have to take to spiritual life. And then when we come to spiritual life, then again things start becoming better, either materially or spiritually, both. We start getting some taste in services and devotees around. And then again the tendency to enjoy comes up.
Yes.
So my question is how to have that philosophical understanding that there is this suffering and still continue.
Well, spiritual life is meant to be joyful. So we don't go around looking for suffering to help it keep us in line. There's a line of Catholic monks that practice self-flagellation, which they take a whip and whip themselves on the back. I'm such a sinner. I'm such a sinner. You know. But this is not something that Krishna enjoys. It's said that if Krishna loves us, if Krishna likes us, he gives us everything. And if he loves us, he takes everything away. So if, we don't have to look for suffering. Let me put it that way. If you just stay in this body long enough, suffering will find you. So rather, every day when our body is functioning and our mind is functioning and we have our needs met, we should say, this is amazing. How amazing Krishna's made all this nice facility for me today. Therefore, let me do the best service that I can today for him. Okay, no need to look. All right. And this, Prabhuji, you had a question? And we'll make this last. Any of the Matajis? Any thoughts or reflections? Okay, Prabhuji.
Just previous, thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your wonderful class. Just previous question, one devotee asked that how to decide priorities, and you gave answers like health and all. So we also have experience, I personally have experience how mind cheats, that we keep priority on the basis of our experiences and fault tendency. So how can we decide the priority at particular moment? Because daily in our day routine, it keeps changing. Like sometimes we feel that we need health concern or we need more time, we need to give more time to chanting. But that's our own decision. So how to consult this, how to understand that, this is the priority we need to consult with, or how to understand this?
Yes, we all need a mentor, so we can ask our mentors. Regulation is really one of the best ways to minimize confusion and suffering in life. Just keeping a very regular schedule. Like Srila Prabhupada, he was traveling all over the world, and yet every day when he'd get a new time zone, he would just immediately begin his new schedule, same schedule. And rising midnight, writing, then morning walk, then class, a little breakfast, doing the mail, then bath, massage, lunch, nap, greeting guests, the darshan evening, taking a little rest at night, and then again. Very regular. So regularity helps us minimize the confusion. Should I do this? Should I do that? And we just know this is the appropriate time for that particular activity. Yukta hara viharasya yukta chetasya karmashu yukta swapna vibodhasya yoga bhavati dukkha. And by temperate, regulated eating, sleeping, work, and recreation. Recreation is included, vihar. So we need to take time to do something we enjoy. If we find recreation in kirtan, that's like cooking the rice and dal at the same time. But taking walks, playing sports, little things that are healthy sources of enjoyment, that's an important part of spiritual life too. So we don't need to deprive ourselves of things, the constructive things that we enjoy. Okay, in fact, those are a part of the equation. All right, I hope, yes, you may all survive in Krishna consciousness. You just stay in this movement. Life is so nice. And rather than age making us more and more miserable, age actually makes us more and more satisfied. So, yep, I'm through with this. So, May you all be blessed to always stay in Krishna consciousness under the good leadership of your mentors here in Pune. Hare Krishna.
Touching upon a very sensitive and very relevant topic for the current day and time. It's not once in a while we get hurt. In today's time, it's almost every time we are hurt. Once in a while we are okay. So, very thankful for Prabhuji for bringing out in a very concise manner. If you read Bhagavatam, that description, it's almost hundreds of verses spread over 2 chapters, where Prabhuji very concisely brought it in this book and brought up the 5 strategies. And along with that strategies, he also brought about the importance of spiritual culture. If you don't have a spiritual foundation, intellectually we cannot defeat and deal with our emotions, where emotions becomes agitated when we are hurt. So we have to see both the things together, with the strategies coupled with our spiritual practice and the culture. That's the reason in the later part of the talk, Prabhuji spoke about the importance of the morning program, chanting and so forth. I just want to reiterate that because generally those who are practicing, they will get that point, and those who are new, they'll catch on to the strategies and miss the foundation point. So I thought I should just balance it out, so all of you, because of a mixed crowd here. So 5 strategies that Prabhuji has shared. I hope you have made a note of it, otherwise we'll WhatsApp so you remember those. And plus a spiritual foundation, spiritual training. So thank you so much, Prabhuji.